A man approached me and my kids in a deserted mall parking lot at 10 o'clock at night and started talking to my kids. I was Christmas shopping at the mall with my then 7 and 15-year-old daughters one Saturday night in a very safe city with very low crime rate. There was an Applebee's connected to the mall, and we ended our shopping pretty late and the mall stores were starting to close. So I took my kids to the connected Applebee's for a late dinner. We finish up eating at about 10 p.m. and leave out the Applebee's entrance into the practically deserted parking lot with shopping bags in tow. As we got to the car, I was in the middle of maneuvering the shopping bags on my arms to find my keys when a 50-ish-year-old crusty-looking guy starts walking up from somewhere in the parking lot with shaggy gray-white hair and a faded flannel shirt and old jeans. I noticed him briskly approaching when he was about 40 feet away, and he said, "This is a stick-up. Give me all your money." My blood ran cold and I stared at him owlishly and shaking and said, "What?" He then said he was just kidding, and came up and stood right next to my daughters who were standing on the other side of the car waiting for me to unlock the car to let them in. He then starts making small talk with me and my girls. He's asking things like if they were being good girls for Santa, how old they were, if we got all our Christmas shopping done, what kind of things did we get, etc. He didn't seem drunk or high or slow or mentally challenged at all. He was very coherent and seemed sound of mind. Mind you, I was a heavily pregnant woman, alone with my two daughters in a mostly deserted parking lot at 10 o'clock at night, who was being approached by a stranger who came and stood right next to my kids on the other side of the car, just shooting the breeze, talking to me and my kids with his hands in his pocket and occasionally looking over his shoulder. I didn't want to aggravate him, so I was politely conversing with him and trying to look calm and nonchalant while trying to disguise my frantic hands digging inside my giant purse for my car keys. This exchange went on for a couple minutes while he periodically kept looking over his shoulder. I was silently panicking and trying to politely keep the situation from escalating by calmly and nonchalantly talking to him while also trying in vain to find my dang car keys and get us out of there. They were in there hiding good. I felt that at any moment he was going to pull a knife or a gun or rob me, and my kids were right next to him, away from their mother on the other side of the car, and I couldn't find my freaking car keys to get my kids into the safety of the car. He kept trying to engage them in conversation, and I could see that my oldest daughter was a little weirded out, and she kept glancing at me to gauge my assessment and reaction to the situation. Kids often tend to not recognize potential danger when they're with their parents, since they see us as their protectors. And being that he was only talking and acting friendly and I was doing my best to stay calm, they were oblivious to the alarming situation we all were in, and being 9 months pregnant, that I was no match for this full-grown man, especially if he was hiding a weapon on him. While still desperately digging for my keys, I tried to politely give him hints that the conversation was over, by saying things like, "It was nice chatting with you, but I gotta get these kids to bed," and "It was nice meeting you," and telling my girls to say that it was nice meeting him too. My polite attempts to get this guy to leave wasn't working because he kept sidestepping my attempts and asking them what their favorite school subjects are and how nice young ladies they were, etc., while I was struggling with the shopping bags and digging in my giant cluttered purse for my car keys. My outgoing 7-year-old was completely oblivious to how not okay this situation was because he was being friendly and because of the whole "I'm with mommy so I'm safe" child mentality. So she started to talk about what she picked out for daddy for Christmas, and started enthusiastically talking about kids stuff and asking him if he knew what Minecraft was, etc., and keeping this creep from leaving us alone by keeping him engaged in conversation. They didn't realize that I was becoming desperate to get them the heck out of there. Then I suddenly felt this sinking feeling of dread when I realized that I may have lost my keys in the mall, and that we were stuck outside with this strange man who kept looking over his shoulders and was showing no signs of walking away, and I was thinking that he was waiting for the perfect moment to pounce. All he had to do was grab one of my girls and threaten their life, knowing it would make me do whatever he wanted as long as he wouldn't hurt them. I started to feel my adrenaline start to spike, and my heart and my stomach started to do flip-flops, and I felt like at any moment things were going to go down, as the gravity of realizing that there were no other people or witnesses around, and that we were totally alone with him, and at that moment, the odds were stacked against us that he had his chance. Then, all of a sudden, he was like, "Okay, it was nice talking with you, see you later," and walked off in the same direction from which he came. It wasn't until then I found my car keys, and unlocked the car and told my kids to get in fast, and I got in too and locked the doors and started the car and drove the heck out of there. My 15-year-old lightheartedly and jokingly said, "Okay, that was weird," and laughed. I was overwhelmed with relief, and then I was confused over what just happened. I thought to myself, Why the heck would a guy of seemingly sound mind think it is totally acceptable to go out of his way to just approach a woman and her kids in a deserted parking lot late at night just to chit-chat? But being that nothing bad happened, I brushed it off and joked about it too. When we got home, my husband greeted us and asked us how shopping went, and I said it went well. And my 15-year-old told him what happened in the parking lot and how weird it was and was kinda joking about it. I started joking too, saying how I was mentally having a panic attack while trying to look calm, and I started making fun of myself by telling my husband how I was attempting to inconspicuously rummage through my purse to find my car keys. My husband went completely white, and I acknowledged his horrified look of alarm, and I assured him that, albeit creepy, the guy was just talking and eventually left on his own. Now, my father-in-law is a retired sheriff deputy, and my husband went through police academy training after graduating high school. He decided to go to business school instead of becoming a cop. And being that the knowledge she gained from that, plus growing up with a cop for a dad, I found out why my husband looked absolutely horrified when I told him the details. What my husband told me completely rattled me to the bone. My husband told me that he was 100% sure that the reason why that guy was hanging around us and chit-chatting was because he was waiting for me to unlock my car. And the reason why he was standing next to our kids was because once I unlocked the car and the kids started to get inside, he was most likely going to force himself into the car with the kids and hold a knife or a gun to them to gain leverage on me, to force me to cooperate knowing that I wouldn't abandon my kids, which would force me to get into the car with them and do whatever he wanted me to do, which most likely would be to drive to a remote location to do God knows what. And being that he wasn't wearing a mask suggests that his intentions were also to leave no witnesses to identify him. I then remembered that he was positioned by the backseat passenger door, where my 7-year-old was standing waiting to get in. My husband then told me that the most likely reason why the guy ended up leaving was because it took so long for me to find my keys, and the longer it took, the more anxious and spooked it made him. And that whole time I was desperate to find my car keys, which, through some sort of divine intervention, stayed hidden in my purse, thus saving us from potentially being abducted. The one that almost got away. A number of years ago, I was employed as a small-town cop in remote northern Australia. The town was a popular tourist spot, but crime was rampant. Breaking and entering and automobile theft were particularly popular. It was about 2 a.m. on a somewhat slow night shift. My partner and I were steadily patrolling the outskirts of town. The air was still and calm. It was your typical stuffy and humid tropical weather. The car's dispatch radio suddenly crackles to life, startling me. I hear the slightly distorted, matter-of-fact female voice of one of the regular dispatchers. There's something slightly off about the tone of voice. Our dispatchers are amazing under pressure, but you can hear the slightly rushed and breathless delivery of the incoming job. Whatever it was has shaken our seasoned dispatcher. The broadcast is to all units. It comes in as Intruders On, which is a shortened version of Intruders on Premises. The job details are still just rolling in, but we don't even hesitate. Intruders On is a priority call. Dispatch fills us in as we race to the address. A young woman living alone had cranked up her air conditioner in her bedroom. She then snuggled under a thick doona for the night and texted her cousin for a bit before falling asleep. She woke feeling something was off, to see a figure of a man standing in her room, watching her. Amazingly, she did not scream or give off a reaction that she was awake. She shifted as if she was still sleeping and curled up further under the covers. She then blindly felt around for the mobile phone that she had discarded on her bed earlier that evening. Under the covers of the thick doona, she texted her cousin about the man standing in her room. Her cousin was the one on the phone conveying everything to our call takers. The victim was conveying that the man was simply standing by her bed during the minutes that we were taking to get there. She could occasionally hear his breathing and movement when he shifted. We debated turning our red and blues on, but declined for fear of the intruder panicking and trying to hurt her. We get there a heartbeat after the other unit. In the darkness, I can make out the other 2 officers moving around the front of the house. As our car screeched to a stop, the headlights catch the man fleeing from the far side of the house. He's barefoot and bounding across the driveway when our guys on foot spot him. We join the chase. The bloke is overweight and doesn't get far running down the road barefoot. We nab him, and I'm surprised at how normal he looks. He's a bit scruffy, bogan, and unkempt, but pretty average. He later admitted that he liked breaking into women's homes to watch them sleeping. The crime made him feel powerful, and he enjoyed invading other people's privacy and violating their sense of safety. He refused to disclose his other actions, but it was obvious that this had been going on for a while. my sister's weird ex-housemate and his creepy girlfriend. So this happened over the span of around a year, when I was 15 to 16. I'm 20 now, and it has only recently been revealed to me how messed up the situation really was. I was, obviously, still living at home at the time, but my sister, who was 7 years older than me, had moved out and was living with her now husband, their high school best friend, and some other dude they met via one of those find-a-roommate sites. He was kind of the reclusive, nerdy type, much preferring to hide in his room watching Star Trek and playing computer games than to actually hang out with the roommates. And the only other person he really seemed to want to be around was his similarly shy and nerdy girlfriend. For a little context to the story, at the time that this happened, he was 28 and she was 24. They were both a little weird, but initially seemed entirely harmless. For ease of telling the story and for saving on characters, the friendly roommate will be FR, weird roommate will be WR, and his weird girlfriend will be WGF. Now, my sister and I have never really had the best relationship with our parents, and at this point, things were especially rocky. My mother was dating a guy who was, to put it kindly, an abusive sack of crap, who seemingly loathed me and would find any excuse to go off at me. As a result, I spent a lot of time staying over at my sister's place. It was around the time I'd spent a lot of time there that WR and WGF started to get really strange. As I said earlier, the pair of them were always kinda odd. They only ever seemed to want to speak to each other, and would even go so far as to ignore anyone else who spoke to them. WGF was worse than WR for this by a mile. He would at least give you monosyllabic responses most of the time. She had a kind of creepy habit of just blankly staring at you for a couple seconds, then walking away if you asked her a question or tried to engage her in conversation at all. That isn't the really weird behavior though. When I would stay over, I'd sleep on a futon in FR's office space, which was on the ground floor. It happened to be next to the downstairs bathroom, which, for some reason, WGF vastly preferred to the upstairs one. She would take long showers in the middle of the night, which is whatever. I'm a pretty heavy sleeper, and she wasn't a shower singer or anything like that, so I generally slept right through them. One night, however, I stayed up mega late doing revision and homework and happened to be awake after she finished her shower. I was too absorbed in my task to really pay attention to anything else, but I definitely noted hearing the shower shut off, because that was my indicator to how freaking late it really was. Approximately 10 minutes later, I look up from my laptop and there she is. I always kept the door open just a crack because that room tended to get unbearably hot if I didn't. And she was standing there outside the room, butt naked, watching me through the open crack in the door. I said her name and asked if she was okay, which seemingly startled her because she walked away pretty sharpish. I convinced myself that in my over-caffeinated, sleep-deprived state, I'd imagined the whole thing and didn't mention it to anyone. Fast forward around a month, and I head over to my sister's one night, to find FR kind of agitated about what he perceives to be a peeping Tom problem. He found fingerprints on the outside of his office window in such a way that would imply someone had been pressing up against the glass and looking in. The blind in this room was slightly too small for the window, so you could see in from the outside if you looked through at the sides, and the room was on the front of the house and the window was easily accessible from the street. He'd become concerned that some random passing pervert had been spying on him while he was having a private moment, so to speak, in his office, or else some potential burglar had been sizing up the joint. The police were called, but as they didn't have any external CCTV at this point, no evidence could be provided and, ultimately, not a lot could be done. To combat this escalating further, FR installed both internal and external CCTV on the house. This was installed whilst WR and WGF were away on holiday, and I guess everyone just forgot to tell them about it. Another couple months later, I go to my sister's to find WR's room empty and informed that he has moved out. Of course I asked why, and was informed simply that he and WGF were a pair of freaking creeps, and the others had collectively decided to kick them out. Apparently, her watching me through the office door was not a one-time incident. The CCTV footage showed that she regularly made a habit of standing and watching me through the cracked door, sometimes for as long as 20 to 30 minutes. I was just usually asleep when she did it. Not only that, but the fingerprints on the window had quite apparently been from WR standing outside and watching me after I'd showered and was hanging out in just a towel, which was a less regular occurrence, but apparently was caught on camera enough times for it to be concerning. As if that wasn't weird enough in and of itself, I was recently hanging out with my sister and her husband, and he passed comment about how he wishes they told me the full story at the time so I could have chosen to press charges. I asked him what he meant by that, and he revealed that not only had they both been secretly watching me, the CCTV also showed that they'd mess with my food and stuff I bought, including clips of him licking all of my apples, her spitting in my orange juice, even dumping regular cow's milk into my lactose-free stuff, which explained why I had a period of feeling really sick from nowhere. To top it all off, apparently when FR barged into their room to confront them about it, he not only found that several shirts I thought I'd misplaced elsewhere had been stolen by the two of them and literally hung up on their wall. She had done several drawings of me sleeping and written a poem called Ode to My Name, whose contents I don't know and don't really want to know. Apparently, FR gave them the ultimatum of, you have 2 hours to get the F out of this house and never contact Gingerbread Bloke or any of us again, or I'm calling the police, and they took the former option. They have never tried to contact me subsequent to this, but I feel sick thinking of what they were potentially planning. My sister's 20-something roommates who watched my teenage self sleep, let's not meet again. I hope you liked the video if you made it this far. Be sure to give it a like and subscribe if you feel so inclined. It would be greatly appreciated.